I'm Vincent DOrta, 1996, and we're at my daughter Marlene's home in Florida. This is the first time in my life I was ever on tape. 1, 2, 3, 8, 9, 10. I don't know what the hell you're doing to me, Robert. You're converting me or doing something to me I never experienced before. And look, you got to have something to shut this off just in case we have to regroup.
We were very lucky.
That rings down the basement,
we had
too.
about 3 phones in the house. And whoever answered it and whoever was, for instance, the house was so big, we needed a buzzer system.
So how did that work?
One buzzer was me. Who was 2? Ro was 2. 1 was Ro.
Right? How's that
3
go,
each
Pop?
member of the family. Pop-ups was 5. He said it was 5 because nobody ever called him.
All right,
And this is my brother John's
all right, we
room.
got a light in here?
Oh yeah, and a fan.
Okay, and a fan.
We're styling. We didn't have fans when we lived here.
But in the meantime, I want to give you a little history of me, my parents, my grandparents. My grandparents are originally from an island called Ischia in Italy. It's about 18 miles out in the harbor of Naples. They were born there. Now my grandmother, she was married 2 times. The first time her husband and her, she had one child, and her husband was killed under an earthquake. And of course she was trapped at that time. She had a large boulder laying across her, but wasn't crushing her, just blocked her in and she couldn't get out. And she had a brother, and her brother knew of this earthquake. He went up to this area where she was, and fortunately he was able to dig her out. And she wasn't badly injured. She did have fractured wrists that still they were never corrected or repaired, and she still had them around the time that I knew her. And after this time, time went by, and then Grandpop happened to be a sailor, and he was in the area of the island, and my grandmom and Grandpop married, and they had 8 children. And unfortunately, 7 of those children have died over childhood diseases, just minor little diseases that were curable today. But in them days, why, they just weren't that lucky. And my father was the only survivor. And well, anyway, he was treasured by his mother. Mother just loved him dearly. Because the reason I say that, because later on in life, she would say to me, take care of your father, all the time. You know, and I just admired her that she loved her son so much, just because the fact that I guess he was the only one out of 9 children. So it was sad when you think about it. Well, anyway, Grandmom, they came over to this country back in 1892, and my daddy was only 9 years old at that time. See, I may be off a couple of years. I think he was 7, because he was born in 1885, and if they came in 92, I guess he had to be 7. So I guess I made an error. But nevertheless, he came this guy, and he was already a barber. He was trained in Italy, in what it was, I think it was, I'm having a problem trying to recall the dates, and I'm getting confused here.
That's all right, whatever you know.
Yeah.
Just.
But anyway, my father was trained as a barber in Rome. See, when he was a little boy, his mother sent him to her brother in Rome. He was a barber. They wanted to teach him a trade. And sure enough, he got to be a very good barber. So back in 1892, when they decided to come to America, she went to Rome to get her son to take him to America. And Grandmom was so upset. She says, oh, I got to take my son too. And her brother was so much against it. He said, oh, you can't do that. I need him here in the business, you know. But nevertheless, they took him and they came to America. Now my father, believe it or not, he came here in this country, and he was cutting hair, a little boy. They put him on a box in order to reach the customer. And that's a story that hardly anybody believed.
Your father was
My
cutting
father,
hair when he was
came
just
to
a
this
kid.
country, he actually, when they came, he was only a little boy. I think about that time he could have been 7 or 8 or 9, you know, as time when I'm not sure for the actual dates, but he was put to work, believe it or not,
And this was in
in
Philadelphia.
this country.
In Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia, yes. That's right, I should have mentioned that. So he came to this country and he was actually cutting hair and he was doing a very good job. Meantime, my grandfather, he was working in some kind of a factory. I think it was a candy factory. And they lived down on Kimball Street, 1109 and 11, they had 2 little houses, 1111 and 1109, Kimball Street. And that's where my dad grew up. And incidentally, my father's original name is Stanislaus. It's a hard name to say, and my grandma used to say Sila, she'd call him. But my dad knew that was a hard name to get by with all the children raising, you know, around the neighborhood. They thought he was, you know, they thought that was a queer way to call a boy. So what they did, he named himself John. He actually changed his name to John. Not that it was done officially, it's just that he did it himself.
And his real name was?
His real name was Stanislaus, which really is a Polish name. It is Polish. And well, anyway, I can only go back to about the time when my mother came. Now, my mother, she didn't come to America until around 1912, possibly. I'm not sure exactly if it was a 12 or 13 or whatever. But it so happened that her side of the family, there was 2 boys and 2 girls. And her father remarried. No, he never remarried, I'm sorry. But his mother died. His wife should skip all that.
Big count. Take a drink. Edit that out.
Had a place. I should have told you that before they came here, there was 2 boys and 2 girls, and their father never remarried when his wife had died. His wife died when the last child was about 6 months old from actually childbirth. It was a carryover from childbirth, and when she died, he never remarried. He did have a maid to take care of the wife. That would be my grandpop's, would be my grandmother. She had a lot of money. She was a wealthy girl, and you know, from that day on, Grandpop, he just never worked at all. He didn't have to work anymore. They had a lot of property, and of course, I heard later that he sold a lot of property that Grandmom had. I think we still have a small piece of property there now.
In Ischia.
In the island of Ischia, yes. Mm-hmm. It's probably unclaimed, and it'll probably be there forever. Nobody will go back to claim it. But we still have a small plot of ground that my uncle, he had a funny story with that. When he came back to Italy, you know, he came back and forth, and when he came back, he went back to Italy, somebody had taken this property over, just like starting to use it as a garden, you know, raising crop, fruit, and so on. So Uncle, he saw this man, he told him, of course, this is his property, and he could use it, you know, while he was here, but he was going to give him some money to leave the property, which he did. He gave him $200. I thought that was ridiculous. And the man said, sure, he'll take it, you know. So he did. He took the $200. In the meantime, they locked the gate going into this property. I thought that was the strangest thing. And because naturally when Uncle come back to America, that guy's going back again. Who's going to stop him? So I thought that was the most silliest thing my uncle ever done. There was 2 boys and 2 girls on my mother's side. The 2 boys now came to America around 1912. And they, of course, were making money with the hot springs that they had. They had these hot springs that they were renting out. People would come over from all over. They would have these hot cabanas. They'd come in and take these hot showers and hot baths, which was paying their way. I mean, they made money through this system. But after a few years, when the boys were over here working, Grandpop said to the 2 girls, let's go to America. Let's go pay a visit. We'll stay there for the summer, then we'll come back. I thought that was a good idea. So when they came to this country, right after they arrived, in 1913, the war broke out, and they were sinking a lot of ships in the ocean there, and most of the ships weren't going to Europe anymore. They just stopped everything. And when that happened, of course, they couldn't go back. They stayed right here in this country. And so the girls, of course, wanted to go back. They didn't like it here. I know my mother, she often said, "What a country, this is no good for me, I want to go back." They were here in Philadelphia. They put her on this small street on, I think this was Hicks Street, around Tasker, between Tasker and Morris on Hicks Street. Small street. A lot of row homes all close together, where my mother had a nice big home there in Italy, and she just couldn't see living down there. She was very hated. But the fact that she met my father, had heard about these people that came from the island of Ischia, he decided to come visit, come courting, which he did. And my mother just took a shine to him, and the first thing you know, they got married. And that was about 1913. 1913, yeah. My brother was born 1914. And then I came along. I was born 1916.
What was your brother's name?
My brother Steve, Dr. Stephen DOrta.
Oh, okay.
And we were living. Well, at that time, of course, we were children, and we were living there with them on small Kimball Street. It's a very small street. So after a period of time, well, I actually was born on 1640 South 16th Street.
In the house, right?
In the house, yes. No, in them days, that's how you, they didn't have you in a hospital or anything. We had a regular doctor. Of course, my birth certificate said that. That's how I would know. And that was all we did there. And then it so happened that we moved out into West Philadelphia. I lost a few years in there. I'm not sure just what happened. But we moved out to West Philadelphia, and I was about 6 or so years old when we moved there. And at 131 North 62nd Street. That's a 100 block between Arch and Race on 62nd.
Still there today?
It's still there today. I go by there once in a while.
Oh,
it's
yeah?
really a rundown neighborhood. And my sister was born 1 year later in let's see, she was born in 1922. If I can get my dates straight.
And you were born in?
I was born in 1916.
1916.
16.
Your sister Tina?
My sister was born in 1922.
1922.
In the house there. And we lived there, and we were the first sort of Italian family in that area. It was mostly Jewish people.
Oh, really?
Really.
This was
beautiful,
moved from
beautiful
south
street,
to west?
old trees, and it was really a nice neighborhood, very nice neighborhood. We got along real well with them, and Mom broken English trying to talk to people. It was funny. They all understood her, though. She did a good job. We moved into the Jewish area, which was, I guess they were frowning. They never showed to us that they weren't too happy with us, because they all got along fine. We never had any problem with anybody, because we never bothered anybody. And after a period of time, my grandfather came out to live with us, because down in South Philly there, where my grandpa lived, they broke in his home one night, and Grandpa heard the noise. He came downstairs, and they beat him up, and he was just an old man at the time, and they beat him up, and they didn't kill him or nothing or hurt him, but they hurt him enough that my father said, this is no thing for them to be there. They shouldn't be down there by themselves. So he decided to bring them out there with us. So they sold their home and they moved out with us. And of course, our home was kind of tight. There were 7 people living in the house. My brother and I had the middle room, my father and mother in the front room, and Grandpop and Grandmom in the back room.
In a row home?
It's a row home, 3-bedroom house. So my sister, she was just an infant. She was sleeping with in my parents' front room. And in 1947, my grandpa died. No, I'm sorry, 1938. My son was born, so he died. I'm trying to get the date there. 1939, my grandfather died. And that's when my sister was actually still living there, but they were living in the middle. In the meantime, I got married. See, that in that era of time.
Well, what did your father do for work when you were growing up? What did he do when you lived?
Oh,
in
he
the
was
house?
he was a barber all the time.
The whole time he was
Oh
a
yes,
barber?
he was a
Oh.
barber right downtown. He worked at. I think at that particular time he worked in the around 15th and Arch. He had a barber shop of his own.
So how did you learn how to cut hair? I heard you know how to do that.
Well, oh yeah, still as a little boy, it was a funny thing. This buddy of mine, very good friend of mine, he was also a boy, came from Italy, born in Italy, and he had a little accent with him. And we were supposed to, I was supposed to go to the movies that day. I said, why don't you come with me? He says, well, I can't. I got a quarter. I got to go get a haircut. I says, wait a minute, I'll give you a haircut. See, and took him down the basement, you know, and I started cutting away. And he had a lot of little scars back of his neck that was done while he was a little boy over in Italy, throwing stones and all this. So these scars were coming up as I'm cutting away. And I really had him looking ugly. So finally, my dad, in them days, he used to come home for lunch. So he came home and he says, what's he doing down there? Come down the cellar, and sure enough, he had this boy. I said, oh, God, what are you doing? Oh, he was upset. But anyway, he trimmed him up, fixed him up, but he still had all them scars that were visible. There's nothing you can do with them. They were just scars in his skull. And, but in the meantime, from that day on, then I started to make a little business going on my own. I was charging 5 cents a haircut. All the little boys in the neighborhood, I had a lot of friends there that had brothers and sisters, and so I was charging 5 cents a haircut. Oh man, I was making my movie money.
Movie money. What movies would you go see?
Well, we used to go 5-cent movies, 10-cent movies. It used to be the Coliseum, the Cross Keys. The Coliseum was at 59th and Market. The Cross Keys was about 2 doors up. And then they had the Imperial on 60th Street. And then they had the Haverford movie, which was located on 60th and Haverford. So, you know, they're all very, very cheap. 5-cent movies, 10-cent movies.
This was when? How old were you around this time?
Oh, I was just growing up, probably 12, 10, 11.
So you were a little entrepreneur at that age.
Yeah, right.
And what movies would you see then?
Well, most of them days they had these silent movies, you know. Tom Mix and
So this was
Hoop
20s,
Gibson
late 20s, maybe? This was in the late 20s?
well, let's see, it had to be in the 20s, late 20s, 20, somewhere in there. I just can't get the dates on this, you know. That's the
No,
thing.
that's how I'm just.
Yeah.
The dates aren't important. I'm just trying to get an idea from where we are.
But anyway,
That was right before the Depression, then.
Oh yes, at 19, and then yeah, I remember distinctly when Bruno Hoffman was executed. That was back in 1928. I remember that so vividly.
Now, what was that? Tell us about
1928. Now, let's see, I was born in 1626. I was only 12.
that. And what happened?
Bruno Hoffman, he was the one that kidnapped the kidnapping of the Lindbergh baby and killed the baby. I don't know whether you remember that.
Oh, sure. Well, I don't remember it happening,
remember, but you remember the story.
The history of it. So you remember that
And then
vividly.
he was going to be executed. I never forgot that. That evening, I was listening there, you know, and they had that on radio, you know, and it did happen. I said, oh, boy, they did, you know.
They had the execution on it.
Not the execution, but they told you when it was going to happen, you know. I think they talked about it. I'm not sure exactly.
Kind of like the OJ
That
trial
was
now.
in 28. Now, we're talking about the Depression was coming on. Things were pretty tight in them days.
You knew something bad was going to happen, or did you? Things were just rough?
No, of course I was only a boy, 10, 12 years old, you
Uh-huh.
know. With me, I didn't think of a depression or nothing. It was never in my bag. I never really,
Right.
you know, paid much attention. But anyway, I didn't even know what a depression was about. But I do know that my parents, they lost a lot of money, you know, in the banks. The banks all closed. That was around 1929.
Oh, so your family did lose money then too?
Yes, they did. My grandpa, I'm not sure just how much money was lost. It wasn't that much, but whatever it was, they did close the banks, you know, and it was a bad time.
The
Bad depression.
president was at that time.
At that time, I guess it was Hoover, under Hoover. Now, that was back in 33. That was Hoover, 32. President Hoover. 29.
October 29th.
And
So did lives of people change around you? Did you notice lifestyle changes for people from the Depression? Did things change drastically?
well, yeah, the
from that
lifestyle, everything was in a turmoil at that time. You believe it? It was unreal. people were committing suicide. Believe me, there was really a problem. There wasn't a happy time for anybody. That I can recall. You know, I can remember some of that. And cut.
Okay, we'll take a break. You're doing so good, Pop Pop.
I can't remember where I am now.